Hello and welcome to, we're calling this Lend Me a Podcast at this point. My name is Dwight Stearns and I'm your host for this week. And joining me this week is Jim Roberts. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Dwight.
I'm glad. Very excited to have you here. I have a bunch of questions for you that I'm looking forward to getting answered. But before we get started, Lend Me a Theater we are a traveling theater company based out of Southern New Hampshire. The idea behind us is we don't have a stage. We need you to lend us your theater and we shall come to you. So we are currently in the production cycle for Into The Breeches. Both of which Jim and I are involved with. So we are here to talk about that a little bit of Jim's history with theater, a little bit of his character, and then, like I said, I got some other questions for him. So I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a good time. So Jim, how did you get involved in theater? I was talking with Laura, and she said that this is only your fourth or fifth show or something like that. Like you haven't done that much, or am I wrong in that?
I took a long hiatus. I've been acting since the first thing I was ever in was actually when I was about 7 years old. There was a musical that was to go on at the private school that I was at, and the kid who was the lead, who was a grade 8 kid, dropped out. And I was like, I memorized all his lines. I know all of them because we've been doing rehearsals, we've been doing practices. And like, oh no, you don't. And then I did all of his lines with all of the emotion and skill of a 6-year-old, but they're like, okay, well, we don't need to cancel it now, so that's good. And then everybody was like so enthusiastic about it afterwards. It's like they talk about the bug biting you. It pretty much did, and it's always been there. I acted pretty much from that point on when I could. I never really thought of it as something to do as like a career. It's always been a hobby thing for me. And then we had 2 boys within 4 years of each other, and having very small ones. And with the lifestyle we had at the time, it just wasn't feasible for me to continue with it. So me coming back into Richard II, back at the Hatbox Theater a few years ago with Gary Locke directing, that was sort of my coming back into more formal acting.
Awesome. Yeah, because Laura said, like I said, so since then, how many shows have you done?
Since then, I've done Richard II. Then I was in Government Inspector, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and now this one, Into the Breeches.
So yes, this is your 4th since coming back. And because when Laura said that you'd only done so many, like in my mind, it almost felt like one of the characters in the show, Grace, who comes in and is she's just this natural at acting. And when Laura said you'd only done a few, I'm like, oh my God, for not having done that much, Jim is like, you are. It's phenomenal to watch you work. Like like you are such a natural, and it is so much fun seeing you just embody Ellsworth. And also, we were in Government Inspector together. Like you were the judge in that. Was that what?
Tiapkin, yes.
That was also like, just like I said, so hearing that you've only been doing it for a little time, and now hearing that obviously you did it when you were younger, that explains a little bit. But still, it's just crazy. Like I said, I'm very, very impressed. It's a lot of fun to watch you go. But speaking of Into the Breeches, can you talk a little bit about the show and Ellsworth and your thoughts and opinions on it?
It's a fun show. One of the things that I kind of realized looking through the script after we got it is it's a show that doesn't really have an antagonist, in the sense that there isn't anybody whose goal in the play is to keep the protagonist, Maggie, from being able to accomplish her goal. You have people who are complications on the way. Everybody's a complication of some kind. And Ellsworth is one of the bigger ones. He's basically the finance guy. He's the person who controls the purse strings and everything. So she basically has to go begging, the main character has to go begging to him on 3 separate occasions and wins out every single time. But they're just delightfully mean exchanges and funny. And working with Aaron, we both have a background in improv. So the 2 of us, they just kind of put us on the stage and we're like, I'm going to walk over here this time. Sure, let's try that out. And just kind of like running alts with each other and stuff like that. So it's a blast on with that aspect of the character that as opposed to like, you can be this character, but make sure you're standing here and then doing this thing with this arm and then this thing with this other arm. Being able to get some freedom to kind of invent is a kind of a delight with a character, particularly one as sort of nasty as he is.
Yeah, he's a bit of a jerk at times, and I understand what you're saying about like working with Aaron. When you're working with a scene partner that you can trust, like that can like keep up with your changes and in your movements, like that like elevates like what you are doing. I think in such a fun way.
You and Aaron and Government Inspector, same thing there. Like
Oh yeah,
the two of you in that, like watching the two of you just kind of bounce off each other on stage and just like you kind of jump up over top of each other like, oh, you thought your performance was good, watch what I'm doing.
yeah.
You get into a little bit of a competition for it.
That is exactly what it feels like, where you're just like, at that point, to me at least, it felt like we were just trying to make each other laugh or get the other one to break and just kind of like build it up and up. And it is that level of, like I was saying, just like trust that you have with that person. And Aaron was a perfect scene partner. It was the first time I'd ever worked with him. First time I'd ever met him. I had like, I knew who he was. I had seen him in shows before, but I'd never like properly and introduced and whatnot, which was fun. So Ellsworth is kind of a jerk. How do you approach that balance of having someone who is he is an obstacle to our main character, but he also has like this underlying softness? How do you find a way to like balance that?
Well, he's got a very Seinfeldian bit in the third scene he's in where he's like, "What is it with forward thinkers?" And like that kind of, I took that as kind of being the Bible for the character. That's like his primary driving trait is he's born into the world he wants to die in. Like he doesn't want the world to change or move. He was born into a comfortable life. He's made it more comfortable through work and effort. Like he puts in, he does actually have a job. He's not the idle rich. But he was born into a world of privilege. He wants to leave that same world of privilege, and that's kind of his driving motivator. And while I disagree with him on that, and I do think that progress is necessary, I can understand that. Like he has a pretty good life, and the changes that he sees coming with the show really do seem to be a threat to that. So the trick with him is having him come to the realization that maybe they're not as much of a threat as they seem to be. And that through the vehicle of accessing some of those emotions and actually understanding other people's perspective and where they're coming from very begrudgingly and very rarely externally. I don't think he goes through much of a like transformation, and he's the kind of person who it might very well be as soon as all the guys come back from the war, he's right back to, all right, no more pay for actors and let's get all of those undesirable people off the stage again. But for this time, I think he's learning something about himself and the world and the way that maybe it could be rather than the way it is, and maybe that way that it could be is the way it ought to be. So I'm hopeful for him at the end of the play, and that's part of what motivates me to play him as mean in the beginning, so that you can see the transformation of the character as much as I can put across with what we've got in the script.
Yeah, with only like I think he's on screen. He's on stage for 3 scenes. 0.2. I don't know. Like it's a very very small part in the last one. So like that seems like a challenge to me, where you have like this man who is like a rock, and like watching him whittle down, but you only have so much time to do it in. So that just seems like a really interesting challenge to have been faced with, and I think you're doing excellent with it. It is, like I said, it's a lot of fun.
It is. He's fundamentally not a horrible human being. Like he's not a sadist. He's not a monster. You cannot like somebody and still realize that they have worth as a person, and I think that he does. And that's kind of the goal. Is that this is very much a play about people finding their worth, and I don't want Ellsworth to be let out of that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So with the play and with the way that you're approaching Ellsworth, is this similar to how you have approached other roles in the past, or is Ellsworth a completely different process for you?
It's about the same. Usually, I'll read through the part for the character, and I'll pull out 3 or 4 lines or 3 or 4 speeches that seem to like get to the core of the character. My primary approach is to assume that the character is being honest, or trying to. They have a goal, they have a thing that they are actually actively trying to do, and that I should trust them in what they're doing. So Ellsworth's drives, I need to look at what he's doing and just kind of embrace those. Don't push against it, and then see where the acting goes from there. And working with Aaron Wilcox in the majority of my scenes, it gives me the opportunity to kind of find how I'm going to bounce off of her and what exactly does that look like in practice. And then also, I do sometimes look at reference material for characters. And for him, I mean, um, arrogant businessmen from the 1940s, I have my pick. So it's kind of going through and seeing what those people were like, what were the kinds of things that he was doing, what might he be doing when he's off stage. I don't do the full method thing where it's like, while I'm at rehearsal, I must be him the entire time. You will address me as Ellsworth. But there's an element of, I want it to feel like this is a real full person. And what is his character when he's off stage as much as when he's on.
That type of, just like hearing how other people approach stuff is always interesting to me, because I come from like a background of like, I have no training at all. So for me, it's just kind of like getting up there and winging it, and hearing how other people kind of approach things is helping me evolve as an actor as well. So like, I really appreciate you sharing that. I know some people are like guarded about like, well, I can't reveal my method or my terms. So that's really, that's a fun way of approaching it.
Well, and one of the things that comes out with it too is I am on the neurodiverse spectrum, as they say. So acting has always been kind of a tool by which I can explore how other people think and what other people do. So when I'm looking at a character, I'm learning from them, and it's really great when you've got a script for a character. Because humans, as you may be aware, don't come with scripts, which is really problematic when you're interacting with them, because you're like, excuse me, hon, I think you skipped a line and now we're fighting. It's kind of a thing that can happen in some relationships. I don't fight with my wife. She's absolutely lovely, just as an example.
Yes.
But, the humans are harder to interact with than a character is. So by reading a character and kind of getting to know them, I can be like, do I have characteristics like this? And if I'm playing a positive character, are these characteristics I can take away from this? And if I have these characteristics and it's a negative character, then I could be like, hey, maybe I want to do something about that.
Has any character you've ever played caused a specific change in your own behavior in that way? Like,
actually, the most recent one I did before this, Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, mm-hmm. I played Ed, who was an abusive man and kind of a pill, and drove his wife away and had set up distance between him and pretty much everybody around him. He was kind of surly and angry, and he didn't talk about his emotions much, and he distanced himself from people. He had various different ways that he would keep a distance between him and others. And I noticed that I'd kind of used some of those with some people in my own life. And I was like, I don't want to end up in the same situation as him. I don't think it was anywhere close to being there, but I was like, I could be doing more to be more honest with the people that are around me and to be more engaged with the emotional life of the people that are around me, on the basis of that. I don't know that there's a whole lot for me to learn from Ellsworth, because he's just fundamentally wrong on so many levels. I'm just like, yes, I'm not a racist or a homophobe. Check.
Yeah, put that in the win bucket, I suppose, because I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's interesting because like Ellsworth is, I agree with what you're saying. Like, he's not like an inherently despicable person. He's very much like a man of his time, and so it's almost like, on one hand, it's like comforting to know that we have come so far from where he is, but it's still, this is also a show, and I find this a lot with, we kind of talked about it briefly with Laura, where like, and when you take something and set it in the past and it shines a light on the issues that we are still currently having, it makes you feel like, one, we've come so far, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, we're still dealing with racism, homophobia, et cetera, and two, like, so it's a little bit depressing where you're like, ugh, this still hasn't been fixed. I lost myself in that thought, but yeah.
Oh no, I get where you're coming from, and in that third scene, there is that ending that I really kind of think encapsulates him so well and his perspective on things, and it's a perspective I really want to kind of forward with the character, where he's like, he likes the arts because it makes him money and because he gets to have power over it, so it's a place where he can locate himself and have authority, but at the same time, he has no regard for the people who are making the art. And that's kind of a universal thing. Like we're seeing that right now with like in mass media with the behavior of, if I can say, the WB CEO
Oh, yeah.
absolutely abusing his authority in order to make a quick buck, and even my beloved Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, taking advantage of people in a hobby and treating them as like a wallet or a purse that they can take cash out of. He's doing very much the same thing and with the same backwards thinking.
Yeah.
Too.
Absolutely. The Wizards of the Coast thing is exceptionally strange. Not strange to me, but it's just like I don't know your history with it. But I played Magic and still do growing up, and it is just like the last like 5 years have been, and I guess we're shifting away from play stuff now, but the last 5 years have just been so gross with like all of the licensed products, which like on one hand I'm like, this is really fun and cool, Lord of the Rings, this is great. But then as soon as like, I don't know, it's just you feel slimy and gross. I don't know. It's not fun to me.
Sometimes I get the feeling that somebody's like trying to slide their hand into my wallet and take cash out.
Absolutely.
Like just I don't want to feel. I understand that I am being manipulated into absorbing most of the entertainment products that I consume.
Yeah,
I get that. I'm not unfamiliar with that, but at least do me the favor and let me think it's my choice. And
absolutely. Yeah, the also like that's something else that I've really actively tried to do is like separating my own identity from the pop culture and entertainment. Like I know that there's a lot of people who like derive like intrinsic worth with themselves from that type of stuff, and I think that that's when you get into really like negative thoughts, and like that like, I think it really like kind of like can be a more of a detriment than a boon. So that's something that I've been actively trying to like disengage myself from. That's I don't know.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an important part of things, and I mean, it does come into acting as well. Is you can't over-identify with a character or a show, take it a little bit too personally, and get a little bit too involved in it. And keeping a distance from the things that are creative endeavors, and making sure that you're doing it for the love of the thing and not because you have to do the thing, to the extent that you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like that is with everybody in the show, at least. Like everyone who is doing this is like giving it one, obviously they're giving it their all, but they like the I don't want to say professionalism because we're not professionals, but it's the just like the care and like thoughts that everybody's putting into this. You can feel that in all of the characters. It is a
This a
phenomenal
real
cast.
craft. There's a real craft to what people are doing. Like people are taking their time and they're thinking things through. They're asking good questions, and they're also asking questions that I know in some productions they might feel dumb asking. Like, I've heard some people ask some really basic stuff, like, "Why would my character be doing this?" And it's like, "Well, obviously because of this." Oh, okay, but they're digging in and they're trying to figure it out, and they're they feel like it seems like everybody feels like they're in a space where they can do that,
Yeah.
which is not something you see everywhere.
And that's the nice thing too, is like, cause I think that some people who have been doing it for a while, like forget that there are people that everyone is on different like levels and not everyone has like the same background. So coming in and being in like a safe space in that sense where it's like, we are all here to collaborate. We are all here to like a rising tide raises all ships type of thing with everybody in this production. And it's just like, I've learned a lot from watching people and just like listening to what they're talking about. So this has been like overall an amazingly net positive experience. I'm really, really, really excited
Absolutely.
for it to go up. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
How about you?
I love the scene that you and Monique have, just the two of you together, being able to watch that, and the two of you have kind of different approaches to your characters and different ways of portraying them. But to see that kind of come together and gel, it's so fun to watch, both from like the drama of the moment, the drama of the scene, but then also just to kind of see the craft that you two are putting into it, and the different approaches and how you're finding ways to get those to mesh together, even though they might feel different or apart. It's just fun to watch.
It is easily like the most like dramatic thing I have ever done. So it's like there's something that I'm savoring because I tend to do a lot of like broad comedy or just like silly little roles. So like this is the first time where I have like a Shakespeare like monologue that I have to go through, and there's like emotion that's tied into the scene and everything. And it's been awesome. And Monique is someone who I've worked with. This is I think my third time working with her on stage. The we were in a show last year called "Don't Talk to the Actors" exclusively. She played my extensively. She played my fiance, and then prior to that was Government Inspector, where I think I had one line to her or something like that. So not much, but this is the first time that we're actually friends and nice to each other. Because while she was my fiance, she was kind of mean to me. So it's a fun change for that, which is awesome.
And it's nice for Monique to be seeing Monique play somebody who's nice.
Yes.
Because, yeah, Government Inspector, her character was not well, there were no good people in that play. Nope. But Don't Talk to the Actors, yeah, I saw that and I was like, ooh, is this her character type? I hope not, because I've met her and she's not this person.
No, Laura was also saying something where it was like, it's nice for Monique to be playing someone like appropriate for her, in the sense of, I think she's always playing somebody like, 20 years young. Like she was playing like a 14-year-old, or I don't remember how old her character was in Government Inspector, but she was not, it was a outside of what you would normally be, the window, you could say.
So, good Lord, that set would have been different with a 14-year-old on it, though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would not have, would not have been nice. So, lovely talking, play with you, and we can always drift back and forth, but I got a couple of questions for you in general that I'm just curious about, because I think that you and I have a little bit in common. So I'm just curious. I've first of all, if correct me if I'm wrong, and I can pull this out if you would like. I was doing some looking, and it appears to me that this is your 25th wedding anniversary is this year.
Yes.
First off, congratulations. That is amazing. What is your secret to 25 years of a happy marriage?
Talking to each other, like open communication. Don't share secrets. Don't keep secrets. I don't have anybody. There's nobody that I would confide something in that I wouldn't also confide to my wife. That's just pretty much it. And even if it's something like, and people are like, oh, well, then who do you complain to about your wife? I'm like, why would I be doing that? Like, how is that a useful thing for me to be doing? Oh, you need to vent sometimes. No, not really. And if it's serious enough that it warrants actual intervention, then she's the one I'm going to need to fix it with eventually anyway. So might as well. But that's basically it. It's just talking to each other. Not that I'm perfect at it, or she is, or that it's something that we're done with. Because that's the second thing, is realizing that you're going to fail, and have yourself a partner who knows that you're going to, and is going to be there to catch you when you do. It amazes me the number of times where I've messed up in my relationship with her, and I've realized it, and it's killed me. Like, it just hurts my heart. And she's been the one to pick me up when what's broken my heart is that I hurt her. It's like, how does that even work? But she does, and I know I've done that for her too. So finding somebody who's willing to be your partner in that way, that's basically the key to it, and putting the other person first.
That's beautiful. Well, once again, congratulations on 25 years. That's not a small milestone. So fantastic.
Yeah, here's hoping for 25 more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
gonna make it a younger model. We'll see. Just kidding.
Obviously. So a couple of weeks ago, we were at rehearsal, and you had said something along the lines of, I forget how X-Men came up, but you were like, oh, blah, 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 what's your favorite X-Men? And I can talk about them forever. And you had said a character that I did not, off the top of my head, don't believe I recognized. Who is your favorite X-Men and why?
My favorite X-Man is Cypher, Douglas Ramsey.
That's it.
Actually a member of the New Mutants originally. The New Mutants was a comic book that was written to kind of rewrite X-Men, where it was going to be actual kids in an actual high school setting learning stuff, and not so much with the superhero way. The superheroing would be kind of the thing that would interrupt their emotional growth and academic growth. That was as exciting as you thought it was going. You might think it is on the tin, and that quickly changed. They started doing a lot more superheroic stuff. But in the early going, they encountered this guy named Doug Ramsey. Mutants are people who are born around the puberty. They start developing a superhuman power. His superhuman power is he can translate languages really, really fast. And he can, so, he'll hear somebody speaking German, and in like a minute be like, oh, I can speak fluent German now. Cool. That's his superpower. And he's on a team with a guy who can fly at super speeds, a girl who can make your worst fantasy or your greatest nightmare come to life, and he can translate things real fast. He's living Duolingo on this team of actual superheroes. And he's sort of pathetic. And my favorite part of it is he's fully aware of that fact. But he has long plot lines that are basically like, why am I even here? Like, his primary superhero weapon is a baseball bat he literally got from the attic of the mansion that they're in. Like, that's what he carries into combat with him. And I just love it because first of all, it's an incredibly useful power. And he uses it in very clever and creative ways. And then second of all, yeah, that kind of feeling where it's like, if he had, instead of being trapped with the X-Men, gone into like Model UN, he would be the most popular and most magnificent diplomat the world's ever known. So, like, the idea that everybody has their potential and everybody has their ability and everybody has an opportunity and a way that they can shine, you just might not be in the right place where you're shining. Like, I have a friend who is an incredibly good woodworker. He's got a bad stutter. Doesn't have really good social skills or anything like that. And I've talked to him before, and he feels like he can't contribute much to society. And it's like, dude, I've seen the things that you can do with your hands, and they're amazing. Like, I will cut my thumb off if I use a saw, and you're making this gorgeous stuff out of it. So that idea with him, just like, phenomenally useful ability, just out of context, and his awareness of that. I like it because it feels like me in most interactions that I have in my life.
I did not even know that character existed, I believe, until this moment. So that's a very good answer. That's a very, very reasonable, rational. That's awesome. And so did he? So if he originated from New Mutants, has he shown up in other stories at this point, or is he a character that gets used a lot, or is it something like, do writers have a hard time like fitting him into stories?
Well, in the 90s, comics got extreme, and
everyone had patches and
the pouches and everything else like that. And Doug Ramsey did not fit that mold, so they literally killed him off. He got shot by an 80-year-old neo-Nazi in a leopard print loincloth. That's the actual canonical way that he died, while wearing a bulletproof vest, by the way. Not that I'm still bitter. But he literally, you could like see him getting written out. It's really the first time I saw a fictional character die in a cutscene. If you're familiar with basically like, this character is gone now. That's written out.
I have to go home now. Poochie died on the way home to his home planet, type of deal.
Yes, exactly. And he's come back since then because it's comic books and they do that. For a little while, they did this dorky thing where he could read people's body language the way that he could read other languages.
I see.
So now he's a ninja kind of thing. Like, aha, I now sense what you're about to do. And it's like, he's still like a wimpy 18-year-old dude. Like, I could know exactly how a ninja master is about to punch me. That just means I know which part of my body I'm going to have to ice up later. But for a while he was like super ninja, and now he's basically just back to being like a guy who helps people communicate and helps bridge gaps that way, while also being kind of a pill, which I love too. Like, he is not the person with a personality type that ought to have his power. But yeah, he's still around in stories. Still one of my favorites. I like it when he shows up.
Nice, that's awesome. Do you still read comics on a regular basis, or is that something that you've?
I do. My pull list this week is about 7 titles. So I collect a few.
Nice. Yeah, I don't really have a pull list anymore. I just mainly focus on, I think, Thor, Turtles, and when Saga is coming out. I'm big into Saga. It's getting hard for me to keep up with it at this point, though, because like some of the books they're like $5 a floppy now or something like that. The pricing is insane.
It is, and I try and avoid those ones. I mostly get monthlies. There are a couple big ones that keep bringing me back. Anything Jed MacKay does at Marvel. He's just a fantastic writer. He has a way of getting into the heads of characters and making you care about them. Currently, one of the characters that I'm really, really hoping gets a big turn in his Moon Knight run is 8 Ball. who's
Oh,
a
I know the name. I
senior.
had a Topps card of 8 Ball. I recognize the name.
Sure. And he's got an 8 ball for a head. He has billiards themed tricks that he pulls when he's trying to do crimes and stuff. And now he's basically the engineer for the Moon Knight crew.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is great for him. And he's just like, and they actually had a bit where they were talking about how, you're an amazing engineer. Why are you still in organized crime? He said, do you know how hard it is to get a job as an engineer when you're not bonded? I've got a criminal record. I've got nothing else I can do. That's how the carceral state works in the US, if you haven't noticed. You commit one crime and you're going to recidivize. That's what's going to happen. I'm like, oh, thanks for saying that out loud.
So that's
and
brutally
then,
honest.
Ryan, yeah. And then Ryan North's Fantastic Four right now. It's just phenomenally fun. There's a cover that I like. When people say, why are you reading Fantastic Four? What could that be? I share with them a picture of Dr. Doom riding on the back of a Tyrannosaurus Rex that is also Dr. Doom.
Can't beat that. That sounds. I love comics. That's just so good.
I know. It's just like I think I shared it on Facebook with the caption, "Comics are good." Actually,
and the Fantastic Four are finally having another resurgence. At least because I know with I don't know how the truth behind it, but I know that when Marvel was in charge of or when the movies were when they didn't have the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four, they more or less effectively killed those books. X-Men less so, because I know it's one of the most popular things ever, but it's nice that they're back. Because I think that certain things like that deserve that, I don't want to say respect, but the Fantastic Four has such a storied history that it still deserves to have a monthly book at least.
And it seems kind of incredible to me. People are like, well, what stories can you tell with them? I'm like, what stories can't you tell? They're a family. They've got superpowers. They do super science stuff. Plus, they know absolutely everything. To give them a story, they can do it.
Absolutely.
So they're a lot of fun right now. And then some X-Men titles, of course.
Nice. Very cool. All right, so let's shift a little bit as well. We've also briefly talked about role-playing games and tabletop RPG type stuff. Do you have a favorite system? And if so, what is it?
The system needs to match the game is kind of the thing for me. So I wouldn't use Dungeons and Dragons if I wanted to do a game that was about high school students fighting vampires after dark. It's not a really great. You really want to dig into the teenage angst there. So I'm probably going to pull up Monster of the Week or something powered by the apocalypse there. If I want people to go into a dungeon and fight some dragons, 5th edition D&D, that's where you're going with that pretty much. But it's more or less the system needs to match match the game, not the game match the system. Right now, I'm actually preparing for a Sentinels of the Multiverse RPG game where everybody is going to be playing X-Men characters. So that's kind of my thing there. In terms of ones I always go back to, it is very hard for me to put down D&D. I try every once in a while, even if I can't quite go to Dungeons and Dragons because I don't have the finances to buy the books for whatever edition is out right now. In the end, I'll either play something from the system reference document or I'll get a fantasy heartbreaker that's a little bit cheaper. But
awesome. For the Sentinels of the Multiverse stuff, are you playing actually X-Men characters, or is it your own original characters with X-Men powers?
The Sentinels of the Multiverse started off as a card game.
Yep.
That's basically superhero based and was created with those characters in mind. So I have played a game that was literally from them, that just stars the fictional characters in their own universe. And then we did one that was kind of all homebrew stuff. And so now this is going to be actual X-Men characters. One person's playing Storm, another person's playing Cannonball. I think my wife has her heart set on Shadow Cat. So, so it is going to be the actual X-Men characters themselves.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. Because I could see the freedom within that to make your own people, because obviously there's whatever wherever your imagination goes, but there is something fun about having an established character. This is my story, my take on them as well. So that's a lot of fun.
Well, and the big thing for me with role playing games too is like some people have said, how did you take like 12 years off of acting? And I'm like, I was still doing RPGs.
Well, I was going to roll that into it. Yeah,
I run the game, so it's like I get to play so many characters every Friday night. It's like it's a real outlet.
When you are the dungeon master, everyone has to have a different voice. Everyone has to have like their own character's personality. So that is in and of itself, just an acting class 101 right there. Yeah, and that's what I was actually going to say. Have you utilized skills that you've taken from your RPG tabletop sessions into acting, or vice versa?
I think they strengthen each other, definitely. Like I first started playing role playing games a couple years after I started acting, back when I was very young. I went to a birthday party for a friend, and I was raised in a pretty conservative Christian household, and you were not supposed to play Dungeons and Dragons. But when you were at a sleepover, you were supposed to do naughty things. So one of my friends snuck into his brother's bedroom and got out White Plume Mountain, which is a classical D&D module, but got nothing else out of the room. So he brought this in. He's like, "This is Dungeons and Dragons. We're not supposed to play it." So it fell to me, the book nerd, to read through and figure it out. We got some Yahtzee dice and started playing. And pretty much since then, I don't think there's been a time when I haven't been either running a role-playing game or acting, and frequently doing both. So I don't really know that there's a heck of a lot of separation I can make between them. There's definitely heavy elements of improvisation that come up in RPGs, and it's the reason why when I started getting to running RPGs fairly significantly, I ended up on an improv team. And one of the comments people got was, you never break. Like there's never a moment where someone throws you something and you don't know what to do next. Like you always have a take. And I'm like, that's definitely RPGs. Because like when you introduce this very, very important dungeon setting and all they ever want to do is pet the kobold.
You gotta let him pet that kobold. There's no way around it, right?
There's no way around it. So you just got to go with it. And it's like, so if on stage somebody throws me a weird thing, I'm like, all right, fine. Yep. There we go. Let's deal with that. Like you think this is new to me? No, it's not. So that helps with a lot of stage work. But at the same time, the stage work, theater is innately collaborative. You cannot do it as an independent sole person. And a lot of RPG playing can become very antagonistic and very insular. And you're looking at your character and looking only at yourself and what you want to do. And so bringing that back from theater into running RPGs, where it's like, we are making this together. It's not me making it. It's not you trying to keep me from killing you. We're making something collaborative. So I think the two kind of bleed over into each other quite a lot.
Have you found the modern popularity of RPGs to has it affected I don't want to say how you've played, but like what's your take on that? The fact that it is becoming more of like a mainstream thing, because you're talking about sneaking out and having to hide a Satanic Panic style. The Dungeons and Dragons stuff is obviously it's a positive thing, but what's your I'm curious on your take on modern.
I need to speak in defense of my parents specifically on this.
Sorry.
My mom found out about it. Well, just because it does kind of work into this too. My mom found out that we were doing it and she was shocked and horrified. My dad was the dad, so he was the one who was going to be responsible for dealing with it. So he said, "Hey, I need to see you play this game. I need to see what you're doing with this," because he wanted to expose my sin, I think was kind of the idea, might have been the thought. I haven't talked to him much about it, to be honest with you. And so he sat down for a session of the game, and we did some shopping, and then they went off and they killed some goblins in a dungeon or something like that. He left about an hour through, and I was like, dang, I guess this is it. Like, this is our last RPG session. And then I went downstairs and I'm like, "So what did you think?" He said, "I thought that was really boring, and I'm surprised you guys like that much math." But I didn't see anything bad there. So if that's what you usually do, I guess it's fine. And so for our house, it was okay. It was sort of one of those things where it was like, don't ask, don't tell. We didn't tell people outside the house we were doing it, but I did. And I'm sorry, what was your question again?
It was about the modern take on,
the modern popularity of it. I will admit that I do occasionally feel a tiny bit of annoyance that they get to have fun right away. And that, the role players are cool now. Like, people are like throwing themselves at Matt Mercer, and I'm like, where were my groupies? Darn it. So there's a small element of that, but at the same time, I just like it when people do things that are fun.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even really play Magic or like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or any of those card games, but I love it when I go into my local comic book store and there's a tournament going on and there's people like loudly shouting and laughing, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's a really good card play," and I'm like, "Oh, nice, that's good." He said he did this, and I'm like, "That's cool. I understand like two of those words, but I'm happy that you're happy." That's kind of my perspective with it, with the modern popularity. I do also think that, frankly, it's something that more people need in their lives anyway. Like, if the choice is between alcoholism and playing D&D every Thursday night, play D&D, darn it. Like, it's a pretty healthy way of coping with life.
It's also really interesting to me that like I go on Reddit a lot, and I'm in like the D&D stuff and whatnot. I know. But I'm in the D&D stuff a lot, and it's interesting just seeing other people talk about it, and it's there's this like shift away from the pen and paper style stuff, because like whenever anyone is online talking about it, like they are exclusively talking about like a Discord game or something like that, and it's very cool. Like I'm of two minds of it as well. Like it's very cool that it's so easy and accessible, and like everybody has like any way to play at this point. There is something I think lost when you're not sitting around a table, and you have that big break and everyone can like, you can look at each other and have that like visual cue, but it is still just really cool to me. And I agree with what you're saying about there's that like you get to enjoy it right away, because like I'm a little bit younger than you, but there still was that like in middle school, that like a little bit, I don't want to say shame, but it was like the nerds are over here playing Dungeons and Dragons and everyone else is not. But now it's like the cool kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons. At least that's how it feels to me. But yeah, it's
I did have a hilarious interaction with someone. They had only ever played RPGs over an online server with people. That's the only way they'd ever done it. They came to one session that I was running, and it wasn't much of a session or anything like that. And one of the NPCs died, and the person was like heartbroken about it. And they're like, "This is so much bigger when you're at a table with people." I'm like, it's a totally different game.
It is.
Like, when you are looking in the eyes of the people that you are working with, it is a different experience. Even like we did over COVID, we would do it over Zoom.
Yep.
Or Discord chat. And yeah, even that isn't the same thing as being able to like literally turn to the person next to you and talk to them about something in character.
Being able to like physically touch somebody is just like, it's a whole other, a different world. It's so much good. So good. Awesome. I have some other questions. So I was looking on your Facebook, and I see that I don't remember how long ago this was. It looks like you and your wife won first place at a jam competition, or you submitted jam to something.
Oh, Deerfield Fair, yes. We are big contributors there.
What is the secret to a good jam, and what is your favorite jam?
Secret to a good jam recipe is, first of all, the jam has to survive in the jar, otherwise it doesn't count. So follow the canning process very, very carefully. Make sure everything is fully sterilized. Beyond that, find a recipe that looks good and try and make it. And I like jams that don't have big chunks in them. I like it to be pretty smooth, like as close to a jelly-like texture. We have a strawberry jam recipe that I like, where the strawberries get all nice and macerated, and it's a very nice spreadable jam. That's probably my favorite. We have a blueberry jam that I'm pretty fond of. I don't actually really like blueberries, but I think the strawberry jam would have to be my favorite. I think this year we need to up the lime juice in there. And that thing at the Deerfield Fair, they only judge you on how well you've canned it. They don't open it and taste it.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
okay.
it's just how successfully have you canned it. Yeah. Which I didn't know the first year we did it, because they judged us very, very poorly for our delicious jam, because we had too much space between the lid and the jam, which is a very particular thing.
Is there like a separate competition with taste, like with judging the taste at like, or?
No, they've got a baked goods competition that you can put stuff into, and there, of course, you could use your homemade jams and things like that, and they do actually encourage it. But yeah, the for the preserves, they're basically looking at how successful are you at preserving things. Which, to be honest with you, as an agricultural fair, that's kind of the more important thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you make a huge batch of really really genuinely delicious jam and none of your jars seal, congratulations, you've now got some very expensive mold. But if you've sealed it well, you will find a use for it somewhere.
I guess that also makes sense. It's not something I've actually ever thought about, but like taste is subjective. Anything like that is subjective. But if you're like measuring a process, there's like, they can look at, like you said, they can see that you have too much space and something like that. That is like something that you can definitively measure and judge against somebody else. And I guess that is always kind of the issue with like something that is subjective, is like, I didn't deserve to lose, I deserve to win type of deal. But interesting. Yeah. That's how long have you guys been doing that?
Jam, we've only been doing for the past couple of years. We've been submitting stuff to the Deerfield Fair pretty much since we moved to Epsom, but even before that. My wife has submitted knitting for a good long while. Nice. She's an avid knitter, so that's a lot of what she submits. I basically, once we started getting a garden together, I started submitting into the garden categories and stuff. And there again, it's sort of objective. It's like, the big deal is not, are your tomatoes absolutely perfect? It's more, are they all round and are they all about the same size? So that kind of thing is fun. But yeah, we've been submitting stuff there for a couple decades now.
Is that something where you're just like, I'm growing vegetables, I might as well? Or was it something that you like set out to do where you're like, I want to submit to Deerfield?
Well, I mean, the knitting thing was easy because Chrissy doesn't knit anything that isn't of practical use. So she'd knit a pair of gloves and she put them into the Deerfield Fair. The way that they do things there is it's on what they call the Danish judging system, which basically means they look at your product, the thing that you've made, and then they look at the criteria for that thing. And if it's a perfect match, that's a blue ribbon. So that's a first place. If it's not so great, then it's a second. If it's tolerable, it's third, and then there's the dreaded honorable mention below it. So, it's not like she's trying to get the best gloves in the show. It's if she puts in gloves that meet all of their criteria, she's getting a blue ribbon. And everybody can get a blue ribbon if they do well enough. So, you get money for it.
Oh, that I did not know.
There is prize money. So she would literally, put in her knitting, it would pay for our tickets to get in, and then she'd have some money left over for the Sheep and Wool Festival, which is like a yarn and fabric event. So it just kind of became sort of practical. Like, we always make more vegetables than we can use out of the garden. Like, it's always going to be more than we can really, there's always going to be extra or stuff that we have to spare. So it's like, if I'm going to have it to spare anyway, I can put it into the fair. They're veggies, so they're not really going to go bad while they're there anyway. And then, I can make a little bit of money off of them, potentially, if I do well enough. And I mean, the third place, I think, for the vegetables is like $1. So, like, literally driving them over there will cost you more money than you will get if you get in third place. So, it does still drive you to do well and put in good produce, good items for that. I've joked that I think that they should have an acting competition there that's judged the same way.
How would that be judged? Would everybody learn the same piece and it's like how well you remember it, how well you learn a blocking or something like that? Or would it be like your own individual thing?
I'm the ideas man.
Someone else can figure out all the details. You're just like, acting competition, make it happen.
Yeah, you've seen me manipulating sets. You know that that the technical parts of things is not my strength. Well, I pick things up and I put them down. That's about it.
That's fair. I usually pick things up and break them. We were talking the last rehearsal about, I think Greg has like a vendetta against me because of the amount of sets of his that I have broken, which has been not a small amount.
Well, make better sets, Greg. Make them sturdier. Dwight's going to be there. Yeah.
Isn't that what it comes down to? I just want to shut and open a door. That's all I wanted to do. And I'm sorry if it broke 100 times. But good stuff. All right. Okay, so this is the last question that I have, and it's kind of just a thing. So I don't know if you're aware of, there was like this meme going around I think like 6 months ago at this point. So it's effectively dead and buried because that's how memes work. But it was Men are always thinking about, like, it was like, ask your significant other, your boyfriend or whatever, how often they think about the Roman Empire. And it was like all the answers were like every single day. I think about it every day, whatever. Blah, blah. I don't think about the Roman Empire every day, but I do think about a lot of things every day. What would your Roman Empire be? Something that is like every day. That you could sit and just talk about forever.
You know that feeling you get when you're just about to go to sleep, where your mind just gets peaceful and quiet as you drift off? You know that moment?
Yep.
What's that like?
What's it like? It's
because I don't know at all what it's like to have a mind that goes quiet.
Oh, gotcha.
Pretty much, I'm running 24/7. And I don't mean that as like a compliment or like I have such a galaxy brain. It's just it doesn't shut down this stupid thing. So I don't have casual interests. I have minor obsessions that last for periods of time. Right now, my wife and I are actually planning on, after this production, putting together a podcast of our own.
Nice.
So right now, I would probably say that it is the New Mutants. That is the thing that if you were to ask me questions about that, I could go on for days. Comic books are probably in general the thing where if you ask me for an opinion about a comic book, I will probably have one. Particularly if it comes from one of the main two.
What's your podcast going to be about?
It's going to be about the New Mutants. We're going to be going from the graphic novel up through issue 100. So yes, I am exposing my wife to Rob Liefeld. I don't care.
So
he's ready for it.
New Mutants. So when did that start? Did you say, was it 80s or 90s?
80s. Yeah. Okay.
You know what?
And then ran through the 90s.
I think I'm confusing. I think I'm picturing New Mutants, but I'm picturing hold on. Wait, is new? No. I'm thinking X Factor, which was the original team redoing it. And then I was also thinking, did Grant Morrison do a New Mutants run, or was that in like the early aughts?
Run? There was a Zeb Wells run on New Mutants. I think Grant Morrison might have done some stuff. He did New X-Men.
Maybe that's something I'm thinking of the new.
That might be what you think of. That's sort of they're in San Francisco, and you have all sorts of. He kind of did it more with mutants as a culture, which was sort of a fascinating take. Because at that point, they'd been mutants as people in tights, which was kind of different. But yeah, it is a very 80s comic. My wife has read the graphic novel a couple of times now and has found some pretty funny things in them. Just because comic book storytelling, like most forms of storytelling, has gotten better.
Yeah, going back and reading 80s is so interesting because it was like the biggest arcs like maybe lasted 2 issues. Like if you had like a Days of Future Past, which is viewed as like this seminal thing, like I think that was only 2 issues long, right? Or maybe 3.
Oh, and the wild thing with the 70s and 80s, that time period, is they were either just a couple of issues or it was a decade.
Yeah, or like a Simonson run on Thor or something like that, where you're right, it's this like universe spanning epic that was like 50 issues or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and in issue 87, suddenly they're referencing something that happened in issue 4. It's like, remember when this happened? No.
That little editor's note, like where he's like, "Come on, true believers, you got this." Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm in college now. No, I don't.
And actually, that's interesting. If you've been reading books since back then, what was this? I'm just picking my own. I'm just curious about this now. Was it? What was the culture like around it back then? Was it like going every week and buying like were there pull lists? Was things like that? I just feel like the information is so much easier to get now as opposed to like looking at solicitations, or I don't even know how you would have done it in the 80s.
In the 80s, it was, I mean, the comic books themselves would have the monthly list of here's what's coming out this month. And then you would have they would be usually an order list in the center of the comic book that you could like a page that you could pull out and thus greatly reduce the value of the comic book. And then literally fill out and send in to Marvel. And then they would ship you the comics.
Oh, that's cool.
You would have to, pay them the money. That's how I ended up getting Excalibur, which wasn't actually distributed in Canada for a good long while. I actually had to do that because it wasn't at the local comic book shop. But I kind of came into comic books around, age 9 or 10, which was right around the time that comic book shops were becoming a thing. And it wasn't just, the rack at the convenience store or the grocery store you had to deal with. So yeah, pull lists became a thing fairly quickly. They were sort of like, a lot of it was they had enough business, but it was just they would get to know who their customers were. So they'd see this short, dumpy, nerdy kid come in and go, "Oh, that's Jim. He likes X-Men," and they'd point me towards the
There's
mutant
a
books.
stack of X-Men, yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and then it gradually became like formal pull lists and stuff like that. And I still missed things. Like I had a whole run of X Factor, and I missed issue 13. I have no idea what happened there. Like I was like, oh, I must have like destroyed it. I must have like dumped a milkshake on it or something. And I picked it up a little while back, and I'm like, nope, I've never read this comic before in my life.
That's so funny. But the way they were structured back then, like you could maybe miss that single issue, and it wouldn't like crazy effect. Like decompression was not a thing at that point.
Oh yeah, you know, Beast would pause and say, "Boy, it's sure a good thing that we managed to deal with that thing last issue that happened last issue."
And it was like a cosmic level event that like almost destroyed the universe. And it was like, we took care of it in one issue last week. So too funny.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Jim. Well, I've kept you for about an hour. Thank you so much for spending time with me. It was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed. Like I said, I think that I don't know. I haven't really gotten to talk to you. So this was a treat. I very much enjoyed it. Once again, thank you so much for spending time with us. And
thank you for having me on.
Anytime. Very welcome. I guess this is the only issue with ending this at this point is like I can't say go here and buy tickets yet because tickets aren't on sale, unfortunately. They should be on sale soon. I think we are closing in on a venue, on a location.
How long is it going to take you to edit this?
Not very. That's a good question, actually. Yeah, because by the time this goes up, I'm hoping on having it out by Friday, which we might have an answer by then, right?
Okay, let me give you something here. So coming up very soon, at the end of May, beginning of June, please be sure to buy your tickets for Into the Breeches at
insert area here
for a price of
$100. Wait, no.
Thank you and good night.
Awesome. That's perfect. I will edit around that. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. This has been an absolute blast. So.
Well, it is a pleasure working with you on this and in everything.
Wonderful. Thank you. I hope we get on stage together again soon. Obviously,
yeah, I basically get to talk to Erin Wilcox. She's like the one person. I've got Briar for the one scene, but other than that,
which is a brilliant scene. The way you and Briar play off each other is it's perfect.
She is so fun. I mean, come for the good acting, but stay for her Groucho Marx impression.
Oh, it's getting so much better. Like she is refining that. So it's so awesome.
And that's not an easy one. Like that's not an easy one for dudes to get, and she's nailing it. Yeah. It's really good.
It's phenomenally impressive. So yeah, once the tickets go on sale, please give them a purchase. Come on down, see the show. You're not going to regret it. This is going to be a really, really good one. So all right, and we will talk to you guys next time. I don't have a sign off. Goodbye.
Bye. Excelsior.